Welcome to SATV News. This is Tusha Amin with our headlines. Bangladesh fully prepared for February polls. Chief advisor tells US envoy. Dr. Yunus set to attend the inaugural session of the 80th UNGA session. BNP yet to approve candidates for national elections, says Ruhul Kabir Rizvi. Propaganda being spread against the party. 40,000 body cams being purchased for polling station security, unveils finance advisor. Now in details. Chief Advisor Professor Dr. Muhammad Yunus said the interim government is making comprehensive preparation to ensure free, fair and peaceful general election in the first half of February. He made the remarks during a meeting in New York with Sergio Gore, the U.S. Special Envoy for South and Central Asia and U.S. Ambassador designate to India. The election will be held in February. It will be free, fair and peaceful. The country is fully prepared, Professor Yunus told the envoy. Sergio Gore commended the chief advisor's leadership and reaffirmed the United States' willingness to support Bangladesh's efforts. During the meeting, both sides discussed a wide range of bilateral and regional issues, including trade, South Asian regional cooperation, the revival of SAARC, the Rohingya crisis, and the spread of disinformation targeting Dhaka. The chief advisor sought continued U.S. support for more than 1 million Rohingya refugees currently residing in camps in Cox's Bazar. In response, U.S. officials assured that life-saving aid for the Rohingyas would continue. BNP leader Ruhul Kabir Rizvi today said the party has not yet approved any candidates for the upcoming national election, as the final selection will be made by its parliamentary board. No candidate in any constituency has been given any green signal. The party will nominate those whose performance in party activities is strong. BNP follows a clear constitutional process for nomination, not any informal signal, he said. Speaking at a press conference at BNP's central office in Noyapaltan, Rizvi also said some recent media reports suggesting certain people have been chosen as candidates are misleading and baseless. He said the responsibility for selecting candidates lies solely with the party's parliamentary board, chaired by BNP acting chairman Tareq Rahman. The BNP leader said this board, to be formed with members of the party's standing committee, will take the final decision about candidates after the election schedule is announced. He further urged party leaders and activists across the country not to be misled by speculative news reports. The government has approved the procurement of around 40,000 body cameras for police personnel to be used during the upcoming national elections scheduled for February. Finance advisor Saleuddin Ahmed disclosed the decision while briefing reporters after a meeting of the Advisory Council Committee on Government Purchases at the Secretariat today. He said the procurement would be carried out through the United Nations Development Programme to ensure quality, transparency and neutrality. Asked about the cost, the advisor said it could not be specified at the moment as the procurement would be managed by the UNDP. He explained that the approach was similar to procuring vaccines through UNICEF, avoiding issues of quality and pricing that may arise in the direct tender process. Saleuddin Ahmed added that the expense would be covered from the election sector's budget. Home advisor MD Jahangir Alam Choudhury today visited the 4 fire service personnel who suffered burn injuries in an explosion at a chemical warehouse in Tongi and assured that they would receive the best treatment. He made the comment while speaking to journalists at the National Institute of Burn and Plastic Surgery in Dhaka after visiting the burn victims of Monday's chemical warehouse explosion in Tongi. The Home Advisor also assured that victims will be given all support from the government, the Home Ministry and the Fire Service and Civil Defence for ensuring their treatment. Replying to a question about measures against chemical go-downs to prevent reoccurrence of such incidents, Jahangir said The warehouses were shifted to Munchiganj after several incidents in Old Dhaka. NIBPS Director Dr. MD Nasir Uddin said the condition of 3 victims is critical, as 2 of them suffered nearly 100% burns and sustained 42% burns, while 1 is in immediate condition with 5% burn. National Citizen Party convener Nahid Islam has criticized the interim government, accusing it of failing to provide adequate security and of leaking sensitive information that led to the egg attack on NCP leader Akhtar Hussain at New York's JFK airport. This attack is a continuation of the assault on the NCP rally in Gopalganj and the attacks on advisor Mahfouz Alam abroad. Yet the government has taken no effective action, he said at a press conference this afternoon. Awami League supporters threw eggs at NCP member Secretary Akhtar Hussain in New York, while he, along with party's senior joint member secretary Dr. Tasneem Zahra, was leaving John F. Kennedy International Airport with BNP and Jamaat Islami leaders yesterday. Announcing the NCP's next step, Nahid said the party will meet with the foreign advisor to demand accountability. He also questioned controversial appointments within the foreign ministry and demanded the resignation of the consulate general in New York. This is not an isolated incident. Fascist allies are repeatedly exploiting the weakness of the injustice system to launch such attacks, Nahid added. We're just taking a short break. Stay with us.
Discover the first 5-star chain hotels in Bangladesh. Grand Palace Hotel Dhaka, 22 Kakrail, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Welcome to Grand Club at Mirpur 10 Dhaka. Elegant spa and wellness facility for ladies and gents. Play pool and snooker in international standard billiard zone. World-class gym facility with exclusive equipment for man and woman. A restaurant of delicious local and international cuisine. Fully air-conditioned building with spacious banquet, car lift, sky view rooftop restaurant, all in one. Grand Club Limited, Mirpur 10, Dhaka.
কি এমন জিনিস যেটা সব লোকে খায়, ছোটরা খেলে পরে কেঁদে মায়ের।
Welcome back. You're watching SATV News. Now news from abroad. France recognized a Palestinian state at a World Summit in New York on Monday, nearly 2 years into the war in Gaza, joining Britain, Canada and other Western allies who made the same historic move on Sunday and were rebuffed by Israel. Everything must be done within the power to preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The summit host, French President Emmanuel Macron, said at the beginning of a planned 3-hour session at the United Nations. The recognition of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people takes nothing away from the rights of the people of Israel, he said, before announcing the diplomatic move, drawing lengthy applause from the audience. Macron outlined a framework for a renewed Palestinian Authority, under which France would open an embassy, subject to factors such as reforms, a ceasefire, and the release of all remaining hostages taken from Israel and held by Hamas in Gaza. Adora Belgium, Luxembourg and San Marino were also expected to recognize a Palestinian state on Monday ahead of this week's UN General Assembly, after Australia, Britain, Canada and Portugal did so at the weekend. Malta made the announcement earlier on Monday. France's recognition of Palestinian statehood means Paris is becoming a destabilizing agent in the Middle East, said Israel's ambassador to the country on Tuesday. Israel sees the move as a waste of a diplomatic tool and a hostile decision, Ambassador Joshua El-Zarqa said. Macron has said the decision would start a process that will lead to peace between Israel and Palestinians. Zarqa said what was needed was for Palestinians to recognize the state of Israel's right to exist and that promises of reform given by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas were meaningless. He added the decision showed a need to rebuild trust between Macron and Israel's government, and that the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would discuss reaction to France and other countries' recognition of a Palestinian state with US President Donald Trump. Russia launched a new wave of overnight attacks across southern and central Ukraine, striking Zaporizhzhia with air-dropped bombs for a second night in a row and hitting several other regions with drones and artillery, officials said Tuesday. At least 2 people were killed and several others injured. In Zaporizhzhia, regional governor Ivan Fedorov said 6 bombs hit the city, destroying a private home and killing a man whose body was recovered from the rubble. Fires broke out in residential areas and industrial sites. He said Russia carried out 20 airstrikes in the region in the past 24 hours, damaging more than 200 homes and infrastructure facilities. In the Odessa region, 1 woman was killed and 3 people were wounded when Russian drones set fire to 5 market stalls. A hotel, a post office, a telecom building, a cultural center, an administrative service hub, and several cars were also damaged. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, artillery and drones struck several districts. Fires broke out in homes, farms, buildings, and a private household, but were quickly extinguished by emergency crews. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday he met with the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, in New York. Zelensky said they discussed in detail the efforts of Kyiv, Washington and Europe to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. They also spoke about trade and economic cooperation, as well as the interest of Kazakh companies playing a part in Ukraine's recovery, he said. Zelensky held a separate meeting with U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg. Zelensky briefed him on the situation at the front and the results of the counter-offensive operation near Dnipropetrovsk and Propskos, according to a social media post on the president's X account. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met the head of the IAEA, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, in New York on Monday and said he will meet with his European counterparts on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly to discuss Tehran's nuclear program. The meeting comes as Araghchi told Iranian state TV on Monday that Iran insists diplomacy is the only way to resolve a decade-long nuclear dispute with the West. He added it was time for the West to choose cooperation or confrontation amid looming sanctions. Britain, France and Germany, known as the E3, launched a 30-day process on August 28 to reimpose UN sanctions, accusing Tehran of failing to abide by the 2015 deal with world powers aimed at preventing it from developing a nuclear weapon. The European powers have offered to delay reinstating sanctions for up to 6 months. The White House said Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's letter to U.S. President Donald Trump, in which he called for a meeting, contained a lot of lies. Trump's administration has seen this letter. There were a lot of lies that were repeated by Maduro in that letter, and the administration's position on Venezuela has not changed. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Monday. She also said the U.S. views the Maduro regime as illegitimate and that Trump is ready to take all necessary measures to stop the Venezuelan regime's illegal drug trafficking into the U.S. Venezuela confirmed on Sunday that Maduro has sent a letter to Trump opposing the re-establishment of direct dialogue between the two countries. In the letter, Maduro rejected accusation that his government is linked to mafia and drug trafficking networks, calling the allegations completely unfounded and describing such claims as fake news as harmful to bilateral relations. The letter also dismissed reports that Venezuela had refused to accept the return of deported migrants, stressing that those stories were false. China has called on Russia and the United States to continue reducing their nuclear arsenal in a verifiable, irreversible and legally binding manner, the country's foreign ministry spokesperson said on Tuesday. Beijing appreciates Moscow's positive attitude in offering to extend the New START treaty. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun said during a briefing after Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday offered to voluntarily maintain the limits on deployed strategic nuclear weapons set out in the last arms control treaty between the two powers once it expires next year if the US does the same. The 2010 New START Accord, which expires in February, caps the size of the world's two biggest nuclear arsenals. At least 3 people were killed and 6 remained missing after Typhoon Ragasa hit the northernmost region of the Philippines, authorities said on Tuesday. 1 person was killed in a landslide in Benguet province, another person fell into a river in La Union province, and 1 fisherman was killed when a boat carrying 13 people capsized in Cagayan province. Ragasa swept through the northern Philippines on Monday, prompting President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to order the country's disaster response agency to go on a full alert and mobilize all government agencies. Hundreds of indigenous people and farmers blocked roads across Ecuador on Monday with burning barricades and trees trunk, defining a state of emergency to protest government cuts to diesel subsidies. The demonstrations turned violent in Otavalo, northern Ecuador, with protesters setting fires to the interior of a police station and vehicles outside the building. Police officers were seen extinguishing fire while soldiers threw tear gas canisters at demonstrators. In Pichincha province in the central north, burning barricades dotted roadways as municipal workers used chainsaws to cut through tree trunks, blocking traffic. Police maintain a heavy presence in the affected areas. The protest stemmed from government's decision last week to eliminate a $1.1 billion diesel subsidy used by the heavy transport, passenger vehicle and agricultural sectors. The removal of the subsidy increased diesel costs from $1.80 to $2.80 per gallon, prompting widespread opposition from protesters who argue that the measure will increase living costs. President Daniel Noboa declared a 60-day state of emergency in 7 provinces last week. Tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets in dozens of cities across Italy, shutting schools, disrupting trains and blocking ports and roads in one of Europe's largest nationwide protests against Israel's genocide on Gaza. On Monday, pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched onto the port of Genoa, one of the several ports blocked in Italy by dock workers and protesters, demanding Italy stop being used as a staging post for the transfer of arms and other supplies to Israel. Protests were held in cities up and down Italy. Schools were closed and the strikes affected some public transport. At the port in Venice, police deployed water cannon to help break up demonstrations. Workers also staged protests at ports in the cities of Genoa, Livorno and Trieste. Further down the coast in Tuscan city of Livorno, an entrance to the port was blocked by protesting workers. A similar protest also took place in Trieste in the northeast. Police in riot gear fired tear gas to try to disperse protesters at the central station in Milan. More than 10 people were arrested in Milan and around 60 police officers suffered bruising or more serious injuries, reported Italy's ANSA news agencies. Before ending, go to the headlines again. Bangladesh fully prepared for February polls, chief advisor tells US envoy. Dr. Yunus set to attend the inaugural session of the 80th UNGA session. BNP yet to approve candidates for national elections, says Ruhul Kabir Rizvi. Propaganda being sprayed against the party. 40,000 body cams being purchased for polling station security, unveils finance advisor. You're updated with the top stories so far here on SATV, and to know the latest news, visit www.satv.tv. Stay with SATV.